Hello everyone, I have good news. Duelyst is back. Sort of. In the wake of the original Duelyst shutting down, there are no fewer than 2 revival projects that have cropped up in the... how long has it been? A couple of years since. The first one to hit the airwaves was Duelyst.gg, which is maintained by one person, a player called Helgen. And that's available now. It's free. The UI is kind of rudimentary, but like most of the cards are in it. And it is... I think Helgen has tweaked a couple of the cards, but it's mostly the same as original Duelyst. And then on top of that, there's Duelyst 2, which is a full revival, actually based on some of the original game's code, with a group of people from the original Duelyst community, including a couple of the original devs working on it. And they've kind of... their plan is they've gone back to an old patch, I think before the game actually launched. And sort of started from scratch again. And this weekend, there's a network test. In fact, by the time you're watching this, it's probably over, but I'm sure there'll be another one soon enough. So right now, it's on... If you're watching this before August the 1st, it's on alpha.duelyst2.com. And it's currently free. All the cards are available. I think it will be monetized in future. I don't know exactly how. But I believe it's going to be a sort of full-fledged product. But for all intents and purposes, Duelyst is back, and it's got, as you can hear, a lovely new soundtrack. I really like the new soundtrack actually. But otherwise, the art is the same. The kind of UI sounds are the same. Other things are the same. So they reverted to a patch way back, like I said, before the game actually came out, that still includes 2-draw. So, for those of you not familiar, before Duelyst actually launched, like during its beta, when the game was kind of originally publicly made available, you drew 2 cards a turn. You start with 3 cards in your hand, and you draw 2 a turn. And at some point that was switched to starting with a 5-card starting hand and drawing 1 a turn, which I personally think was an improvement, but there was a quite vocal, I guess, section of the community who felt that the original 2-draw was kind of like it was a relatively unique thing. Like it was a differentiator from between Duelyst and other games. And I think quite a few of those people are working on the remake, and so they've gone back to this older patch that has, among other things, 2-draw. A couple of that, they've remade a lot of cards that didn't see a lot of play. Like a lot of weaker cards are have been reworked or sometimes buffed, but usually changed entirely. Like this is Mobius. The old Mobius was like a 3/5 that when it took damage, I think it swapped, or every turn or something, it swapped its power and toughness around. This one is just a completely different card. And there's also a few nice quality of life changes, like the cards now have faction icons on them, which is an absolute godsend. I mean, most of the time you could tell because of the color palette, but like it helps a lot. I think, this is something long overdue. A lot of cards haven't changed though, including most of the best cards in the game. So, and not only that, because they've gone back to this old patch completely, which means that a lot of nerfs have been reverted. If you ever wanted to play with the old Mana Vortex, Blood Rage Mask, old Inner Focus, old Lantern Fox, you can do that. So, my first impressions, and I'm going to make some gameplay videos after this as well, this is just kind of an intro. My first impressions of Duelyst 2, both from reading the spoilers and from actually playing it, is it is the time to go face. Absolutely face. This was the first deck I thought of, and the first deck I built after, the first deck I thought of when I saw the spoilers, and the first deck I built when I got my hands on the game. This deck has 18 cards that can deal 3 damage to your opponent out of hand. That cost 3 or less mana. Because we have Old Inner Focus, back to costing 0. We have Mana Vortex in its unnerved form, where it draws a card at the end of turn. We have Blood Rage Mask, costing 1. Very powerful. We have Saber Spine Seal, it's another way to deal 3. We have Flame Blood Warlock, of course. The card never got nerfed, but it's another way to deal 3. Phoenix Fire. Old Tusk Boar is back. Old Saber Spine Tiger for 3 mana is back. And I think there's one changed card in here, which is Jade Monk, which has been reworked to a much more interesting design, I have to say. It's a 4/4 that costs 1 less for each spell you play this turn. I don't know, I might cut it. I put them in because I think they're cool, but I wanted to see how the card did. But I think mostly this just needs to play cards that either got nerfed at some point or maybe should have. I don't know if juxtaposition costing 0 is healthy for the game long term, although it was never like a huge problem in original Duelyst. So right now, between the aggressively costed cards and the 2-drawness, and a couple of the card changes, like most of the reworked cards are still not that strong, but there are a few that are pretty spicy that happen to dovetail quite well into this. So this is one of my decks. I'll go through this in a video where I play it, but you can build burn decks. I think the second deck I built was based around the reworked Mind Steal, which turns your hand into a copy of your opponent's hand, which means that if you just dump your hand and then play this, it's like drawing, well, a minimum 2 cards, often 4 or 5. Plus, you can fill your deck with cheap chaff, and then if you're playing against a deck with higher quality cards than you can steal them, so now you have a bunch of crap on play, and they're good cards. And if they're playing another aggro deck, and you manage to get a few cards off of them, well, it's more burst. Speaking of aggro decks, this is the first Magmar deck I've ever played that doesn't have Warbeast in it. There's no Mercantor in this deck, it stops at 4. I decided to play the mech package to see how they worked. I'm yet to make Megazord. I don't think the mechs are necessary, but it turns out when you've got 3 of this in your deck, which it got buffed, it's +2 attack now, and 3 Greater Fortitude in your deck, random idiots with Frenzy or Hexproof are good. Just like consistently, or ranged, consistently pooping out tiny minions and then buffing them up and attacking face, and then reloading your hand with your opponent's cards that are probably better than yours. So far, it's worked pretty well. I think, as of yet, I've played a few different decks, and I'm yet to lose except to a mirror match. I played against another person who, well, it wasn't a mirror match per se, but they had a Mind Steal, like, board flood aggro deck. They just had, like, Elucidators and Silithars and stuff instead of mechs, which is probably a better way of building it. Although, Elucidator isn't good in aggro mirrors. What else? Tempo Argian is a popular one. I've played against a few different builds of this. This is mine. I'll walk through it at some point. Arclight Regalia is really good, or feels really good at the moment. Mostly just slapping people in the face until they die, which is the overall strategy of the format. You'll again notice there's nothing in here that costs more than 4. This is maybe not a surprise. I'm sure people made this argument when 2-draw was switched to 1-draw in the first place. I kind of joined a little bit after that, so I caught the tail end of some of it on Reddit with people being like, oh man, you shouldn't have taken 2-draw away. And then other folks kind of defending 1-draw and so on. But playing cards that cost 5 or more right now feels bad. I played against an Argian player, or a Lionel player, who played 3 Ironcliff Guardians in a row, and it just didn't matter. I killed them all, and I was killing them and playing another spell in the same turn repeatedly, so they just fell further and further behind. And you can just keep doing that forever without need for card draw because it's 2-draw. You can always double spell. So, or double play, sorry, using magic terminology. Despite this, obviously it's real nice to play Duelyst again. I hadn't thought that I honestly hadn't thought I'd get back into it. And I may not, I'm not really sure, like, I don't really plan on taking up streaming again. I probably will make videos from time to time, but I'll see how all of that goes. Like that, personally, Duelyst represented a very defined arc of my life that is now kind of finished, right? I guess it is literally a sequel, in the same way that this is a sequel to Duelyst itself. For me, it's also kind of a sequel to like a section, like a completed story of my life. And I don't know if starting again is something I actually want to do. But God, it feels really good to like see these cards again, to play these cards again, to like, you know, hear the sound effects and Magmar versus Lyodar and all this stuff. Like, I have missed that, and I didn't realize how much I'd missed it. Like, absolute shout out to both the devs of this game and Helgen for Duelyst.gg for like bringing this stuff back, because man, like I was loving when the spoilers started coming out. I was really enjoying looking through them and you know, trying to analyze the cards and stuff, and I have really enjoyed building mouth frothing aggro decks. And like my first game of Duelyst 2, I was one off lethal on turn 3. I cannot overestimate how aggressive you can be in this format. Like my opponent played 2 cards and then died. But you know, this stuff is balanceable, right? What I expect will happen. I don't know if they'll stick to the 2-draw thing long term. They may or may not. But I suspect a lot of the nerfs that have happened will be easier to bring in. You know, there's no stigma to being like, yeah, okay, Chromatic Gold should deal 1 damage. Yeah, okay, Blood Rage Mask could probably cost 2. And maybe we'll see some other cards that are sort of buffed to make up for it. Maybe if the removal gets worse, big minions will be better. I'm not really sure still. Like, I have found it to be preferable to make the most inefficient looking plays in terms of card quality or card value. Like doing things like, I have 1 mana left, I'll flash the like frenzy mech with like, so I spent 2 cards on a 3/1 frenzy. But you know what? There's no one's playing Blood Tear because it costs 2. Blood Tear used to be rubbish. So you can just do that. You can play X ones, which makes like the fact that Blood Tear is worse. Obviously, it would see play in all the aggro decks, but it also means you can get away with stuff that you couldn't before because no one's playing Blood Tear and there's no Bloodborne spells, so there's no Cassiva Pings or Lilith Wraithlings to like punish you for playing low toughness minions or leaving low toughness minions alive, which I kind of like actually. It is nice being able to attack something with a 2/3 and have a 2/1 left over and not feel like an idiot about it. So I do like that. But I am also thinking that like when they give us Blistering Scorn again, it's gonna like turn everything upside down, you know what I mean? Like I think the lack of these efficient answers does somewhat magnify how like heedlessly aggressive you can be. Like Flameblood Warlocks going unpinged as well. Like this card is really good because often it can attack, which was absolutely not the case before. So if you are coming back looking forward to playing Pandoras, I have some bad news. However, if you go to Duelyst.gg, you can cast Pandora there to your heart. Well, assuming Helgen's implemented it. I don't know if they have, but you can probably cast Pandora there to your heart's content. Here, if you want to go face, this is the game for you. I think there probably are ways to play more controlling decks. I built a heal deck that I've only played 1 game with it, but like if everyone's doing burn things, playing a deck with like 12 or so sources of healing is pretty good. I have no idea if this deck is like this. There's a lot of 4-drops, which was always a problem with Zeren before, and it's even worse now because of 2-draw. So this list is probably bad, but I think, you know, I think there's some counterplay, and I think that if this network test lasted longer, or if the cards come back in the same form next time round, we will see some counterplay coming out. Like we'll probably see decks that beat Burn High or like base Magmar decks and things like that coming out, and having a bit of a metagame balancing factor. That said, there aren't that many. There's like very few good provokes, and there's no like, there's no like healing wells. The new Sunseer is very good actually. They changed this so that it basically has lifesteal instead of like when it attacks you gain 2 life or whatever it was before. So if they attack it, you still heal, potentially multiple times, and if you buff it, it heals some more. So this card is kind of quietly a big deal, I think. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, obviously, it's a couple of days. It's too short for any real metagame to develop. But loads of people are playing this. Like the queue times, at least yesterday when I was playing, the queue times were a couple of seconds, which is absurd. Like loads and loads of people are keen on this, which is quite cool and must be really encouraging for the devs. So I hope it sticks, and I kind of, again, I didn't think I'd be saying this, but I do look forward to playing more Duelyst in the future. So this kind of concludes my first impressions, I guess. What I've thought of the card pool so far, and I guess what the game is and stuff. I'm going to do some gameplay videos with these decks, or maybe other decks if I make something in between. Basically going to record as much as I can in between games of Dota this evening, and I probably won't have time tomorrow. So I'm hoping to get a few videos recorded, and I'll put those up on the channel over the next few days. So yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you shortly for the gameplay videos. And yeah, shout out to the developers for this. It's so good to have Duelyst back. And it's so lovely to be chatting to Duelyst players about Duelyst again. You know, like, I really missed that. Legends of Runeterra entertained me for a bit, but I fell off of it. And I really miss having, like, you know, enthusing with people in Discord about decks. It's good to be back. See you later, everyone.